So that's been what we've been up to since you've been out. Helena or Mark, do you have anything else that we need to kind of share with Eric on what we've been discussing, or
Well, I
any
think, yeah,
recap?
we made it to probably milestone number 8, right? I think you mentioned that.
Mhm.
And we spent a good time on the operating model, which was really helpful, I felt, last week. So I think that was the big part of the meeting. And uh, Brian, were you making any of that content available to view? Because in documents, they're still kind of the same, at least in the think tank documents, it's the same content that's been there.
Okay, let me put that up
I don't know if
now.
any of those other visuals were available because they were just, yeah, they were really good. So,
Yeah, let me do that now. Oh, we also had we also had some branding things we did, like orchestrators drive outcomes. You know, we were just kind of playing with, like, on our side, what kind of visuals might we post on LinkedIn.
right,
So
that was, you posted this one. So,
yeah, so we've been playing with that type of stuff too. Cool. Let me post that operating model. I'm also working on a course, basically.
yeah, you mentioned that too. So, any help you need on that?
And then we also did the maturity model.
I can't really say I remember anything above what you've already mentioned
Okay.
that we should have talked about last time. So yeah, I think you're
Okay.
doing a fairly good update or recap.
Great. Thanks. One of the things that we also worked through is kind of a maturity model view. I don't know, Eric, did you see that at all? The maturity model?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Wait a minute. That's like you've got stages, right? And it's
Mhm. Yeah,
broken
it
down
looks like this. Let me show you.
yeah. You shared that.
Okay.
You know what might be interesting, and again, again, maybe Phil's going to attend, and we'll certainly, want to spend time with him. But um, I again may end up being a guinea pig. Hopefully, with fingers crossed soon. And I've got this third interview today in the afternoon, and I thought about some questions that I have for her in regards to sales enablement. What's the as I'm trying to get a feel for how they're doing things, and one of the things that I'm asking up front, is like, well, what are the either tasks or activity or initiatives that are due right away, right? So when someone starts with the organization and in the sales enablement role, what are you working on right away? Your approach to it to try to find kind of where they are in terms of how where they are in terms of maturity, right?
Mhm.
And how they're getting things done. Um, so I'll have some questions around that, because you'd mentioned last week that when you hear the thing kind of army of one, right, where that's what that person is and
Mhm.
has the backing of the CEO, but how does that army of one, and let's say I join that organization, how do we then begin to uh, move in the direction of orchestration, instead of that mindset or lens of being reactive and tactical, And we probably have covered it. We covered so much, but maybe it's just not in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, that if I put so the key is to have build that foundation. Oops. So we talked about we talked about this. What is the foundation? And then
Right.
how do you start globbing onto or taking other initiatives and corralling those. So that's been part of the challenge of enablement leaders is what work is currently happening? How do we assess and determine where to put our effort and what our time? And then how do we become more proactive? And that's, do you do it based on the initiative view? Do you do that based on stakeholder management, things like that? And that's part of the challenge is what relationships do you have? What relationships are required? What initiatives are you handed? What people are you given, if any?
Okay.
And then what's the expectation that people currently have? Because the expectation they currently have is likely completely different than what you want to get to. So you have to figure out how to orchestrate that, you know, so they can
Right.
see what you're even talking about, but you're the new guy on the block. So that's the hard part about doing that. You have to have a solid foundation in order to build from. So
Right. It's not like I'm going in and making recommendations. It's going in and just, hey, finding out where things sit. Where of course, if I'm being very, presumptuous, that
mm,
well, we'll see how that goes. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
yeah,
Brian,
yeah,
in last week's session, so apart from the sales enablement maturity levels, but when we were discussing that, there were alongside this particular slide, 2, 3, maybe 4 other slides, which I don't believe the group had seen that much of before. So this one for sure, we have seen practically from start. But you also had a couple of other slides, which were very, very good for the conversation.
yeah, okay.
Do you know which ones I'm talking about?
So yeah, related to the operating model. So for example, like what
Yes.
is it?
Yes.
It was this one.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
This was really helpful.
Yeah. So what is it? Why do we talk in terms of an operating model? Sales enablement leaders typically don't build out a capability. They build out a relationship or an engagement model. And I think the difference between an engagement model and an operating model rolls up not only the engagement piece, but also the production of what you produce and what you measure into a way to set and manage expectations and evolve, right? Continuous improvement, an evolution of the function, where these 8 components become more mature over time. And it's about services that you provide, not random acts of doing. And that's really critical. So we're gonna put this. I'm building a introduction to commercial enablement kind of course, and putting some of this stuff in it. And then I'm also working through like what is a business within a business, things like that. So as far as like how all does this all work together, that's the challenge, right? How do we get it all to work together, and how do we get it to kind of come together in value for our internal customers?
Brian, how do you answer that question, a business within a business? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's a so all businesses have the same components. I think to answer that question, there's some. If we go back to our tenants, there's some things that we have to agree to in order to kind of tackle that. First is, do we want to build ongoing services or not? So that gets to what are we selling? Do we want to try to fix the ecosystem or not? which goes to what kind of services are we providing? Do we want to build a function or not, or is it a role? Because it's hard to have a business with a business when you're an army of one. And then partner. So to answer the business within a business question, it goes to what does it mean to have a function? And most organizations staff a position on an org chart and tell people to go for it. The challenge in sales enablement is all the work we do in sales enablement is cross-functional, and all of the work that we do, because of all that work we do is cross-functional. We have a challenge in being just pigeonholed into a position on an org chart. So what that means is, what are we selling? Are we selling, messaging or demand gen or talent development? Like, well, that's owned by a lot of different people.
Right.
So what are we going to do and how do we do it? And then what are we going to do? Are we going to build and deliver stuff? Are we going to run programs? Or are we going to run a business within a business unit? And most sales enablement people haven't thought about that before. And when you think about elevating the function over time, whether it's demand gen or stakeholder management, there's this from to journey, which is, doing with people, working up, down, and across, working within a matrix and driving outcomes. But most people think of a function as you delegate stuff, you have your domain, and you only own certain things, and you crank stuff out. So the challenge with our function in sales enablement is we're building an interconnected web. We're not a function that just has a position on an org chart. So to help with that, we introduced this concept of a business within a business. And a business within a business is literally thinking it through like we are a business. All successful businesses have a mission and a vision. So what's our mission and vision? All companies have a core competency. What's our core competency in sales enablement? Most sales enablement leaders can't answer that question. They talk about their individual skill and people problems. Companies maximize shareholder value. And companies have key discrete functions. All companies do. So when we think about sales enablement as a business within a business, we start there and we say, well, who's buying from you and what are they buying?
All right.
And and Mark's question of I'm an army of one, that's a position on an org chart, not a function. So the question there is, what are people buying from an army of one? And they're usually not. You're a cog in the wheel. Nobody's coming to you for services, or they're not coming to you to get services. They're coming to you to get your hands and eyes and fingers to do stuff for them. If you say, hey, what are you buying from me? They'd be like chuckling. So how do you evolve that?
And then it comes down to the value proposition of this business within a business to, to the buyers, to the revenue officers, or the sales executives. What's the benefit of having us run a business within a business? How does that serve the organization, right, differently than us? So that you can have that conversation, right, about why we process things the way we do, why we are structured the way we do, why we work with the way that we do. If you're going to sell that case and make that change within the organization, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's so it's much like saying I'm a trusted advisor. Do you go into a room and say I'm your trusted advisor, and therefore buy from me? Or do you go into the room, do your work, and people are like, wow, that person's a trusted advisor? And where does that trust and where does that authority come from? Does it come from that being given to you, or does that come from it being earned? And most the challenges in sales
Well,
enablement, it's like, hey, I have to be empowered, equipped, staffed, resourced to be that. Whereas in sales, it's about what's that perception, and how do I evolve my perception to earn that trust. So I act like it first, and then I'm given that authority.
right. So it's, okay. Again, it's going to be the way you go about what you do. Then that's going to,
Hmm.
kind of exemplify who you are and how you operate.
Hmm.
This army of one situation and how it maps to a business within a business, is it a fair? I mean, certainly being relegated to a cog in the wheel is against what it is that we're trying to do. But if you reframe that as a solopreneur,
Hmm.
you can still be a business within a business as an army of one. Those two things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
Well, I think you're a role if you're an army of one. You're not a function. I don't think you can fully orchestrate. You can maybe coordinate. There's a difference between orchestration and coordination and delegation. As an army of one, how are you going to spin all the plates of a business within a business? That's a tough one. You can provide individual services or individual production capability.
But from the journey from being kind of a role based position and moving forward in terms of, hey, how do you get to where you've got the ability to employ resources to run it as a business is, again, how you show up and how you act differently, and the questions that you ask, and the people that you work with to be able to, it's just, hey, Ondash does things completely differently than what we expected. He does this, and this, and as a result of this, we're having all these, wonderful things happen, right? And then down the road, it's like, well, here's why, and here's what we're looking to build to continue that and to grow that within the organization. Here's what we need to do that.
Yeah, so you're an individual consultant, like Eric, I don't know if you have if you have people on staff or whatever in your business, but you're probably thinking like an entrepreneur and acting like an entrepreneur and running as an entrepreneur, and you're consulting and providing those services, but it's Eric, not the function, is the value. In a business within a business, the function is the value, not the individual. And that's the big difference, is that function is funded, that function is valuable, not the person. The person individually of Eric, if he leaves the company and everybody looks around going, well, there goes our sales enablement capability because Eric just left. There is
Right.
no function left behind. It's the person, not the function. Those are
Right.
mutually exclusive. So yes, you can have a person with the mindset of solopreneur, entrepreneur, but that individual has a face and a name. That individual is sales enablement. And that's what Phil's running into. Phil is sales enablement. The expectation, though, is that Phil is impacting revenue. He has to build a function to do that. And he's getting headcount and all that, but they have no idea what they're giving him. They're throwing bodies at it, which is also a challenge. So he's being run as a function, not as a individual with a salary. A key trigger to know if you're a function or not is what's your discretionary budget? What can you allocate funds to? Most sales enablement, I think 75 to 80% would be my guess, don't have any discretionary budget. They're not a function. They don't get the annual budget process. They are a person with a salary and benefits, told what to do and given a scope. So the difference between an individual contributor and a function is, what's your discretionary budget? How much budget authority do you have? And what's your sign-off authority? Those are functional, compartmental criteria for finance.
I think
Budget
that's the
code,
whole
cost
thing.
center, things like that.
I think also you're absolutely right there, Brian, when you talk about the budget. And you mentioned earlier the mission and vision of the function. I would say to really be a function, you have to, or it would be very helpful for you to have a very, very clear charter that you can share within the organization with other people of this is what the sales enablement function is here for. This is what we are doing. This is how we can help you. Also having very clearly specified roles. So it's not just about headcounts. It's about, well, what type of roles we have in the sales enablement function that doesn't exist anywhere else in the organization, or not for the same usage in the organization. Yeah, now I lost my thinking. my head is a bit bombarded today, so it feels like I'm not quite there with you, but yeah. One thing that those of you who have heard me over time will recognize when I say this, a function will often have well-defined functional authorities, which is a key aspect of really making a sustainable difference in the organization.
Yeah.
Because that gives you the power to decide what to do and cross-functionally what to do, and other units, business units, other top leaders and so on, they have to respect that you have that functional authority, because the executive leadership team have given you that functional authority, that power.
Yeah. And the other side of that would be you have skills, you have capabilities, you have the ability to do things. So you're valuable in that way. It's just that you're a funded position, not a funded function. So you kind of know your function if you have that clear charter, you have clear functional authority, you have some sort of budget and or sign off authority, you have a cost center and a departmental code. That's the ultimate. If you don't have that, you're definitely not a function. And then the function's going to operate after you leave. Like, oh, Brian left, I guess the next person's going to come in and it's going to be there, the next Pablo Picasso is going to show up and create enablement in his or her vision. And it's about vision alignment and do I like the person, versus that function continues after Brian leaves. It has processes, it has procedures that continue after you leave. And these are kind of the differences I see. Does that help, Mark? You can still act as a business within a business unit owner, but I think the key would be, how do you get a clear charter? How do you get functional authority? How do you get budget and sign off authority? How do you establish a cost center? And how do you create a function that operates with the operating model components? That's how you create a function from scratch.
Right, and yeah, that's very helpful. I think for me, it's from a practicality standpoint. It's the journey to that state, because you're probably not gonna, it sounds like it's not something that is, widely seen at this point in time.
Right.
In terms of. So if you are one or two people and you say, well, this is our vision, okay, how do we get there? Right? How do we
Yeah,
end
because
up?
that's the vision, and it's tied into
Right. How do
your
we
name.
move from this role based to this function based? What do we do to get there? What do we have to? What's our output? How do we act? If unless we're because if you're a small department, certainly that's. And what does that journey look like? Again, what are the things that you want to do differently? And I think those are kind of the tenets up front that you had proposed. This is how we act. This is our operating model. This is
Yeah,
how
this is
we
our
think.
roadmap. This is our journey.
Right. This is our playbook. This is what we're doing differently as opposed to. So if someone gives us a request for something, and we're seen initially as reactive, how do we respond to that in a way that is different? That an orchestrator would respond to, instead of saying, okay, it'd be no, well, we've got questions. We would talk to other individuals. We would work with other departments. We would take a broader view and an approach to whatever to begin to move in that direction. I think I could be off.
Mark, one suggestion is to take, next time your company comes out with the go-to-market, to go-to-customer strategy, and it's the time for the ops planning and all of that, take an extremely close look at what they are saying when it comes to the key strategic initiatives, and think out, is there somehow a service, a program that you can run, you and a couple of others perhaps could run, that could really make a difference from the viewpoint of the executive leadership team, to get their sponsorship? Yeah, that program, that service is one essential component in achieving this key strategic area for us.
No, I wrote all that down. Thank you.
That's good. Yeah.
So because it's really, to get to the function status, it's really very much about proactiveness. You have to think out of the box. You have to try to see things, see connections, see opportunities that the others haven't, and literally grab and present an opportunity, and then make a success of that. If you're able to, perhaps not just one, but very closely after, another initiative that could be helpful, so that you get the mind and the ears and eventually the money from the executive leadership team.
Great. That's super helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to add this little bullet here. I'm going to add this one. You're given authority by those you serve or sell to. I don't know if that's the same thing as functional authority.
No, no, it's not. I can say one thing when it comes to functional authority. If you have functional authority of something, then you can precisely define and stipulate how certain things should be done in the organization, to the extent that it's auditable, either by the corporate audit team, or, as actually happened in our case, the company where I worked the last time, eventually the corporate audit team came to us and said, will you please take over doing all the auditing for sales, because you are really the only guys who can do it.
So you have functional authority to define a standard, methods, procedures, or processes, even if it's something small like running day one of onboarding. If
Yeah.
you can, if you own that and you can define the procedures, the content, the processes, to how you're going to do it, and people don't mess with you, then you have some sort of functional authority.
Yeah, and you know, when the corporate audit team actually looks at what are the processes, the procedures, the tools, etc., that you have stipulated should be the ones used by X roles in these circumstances, well, then they can audit and do audit on, does that actually happen?
Yeah, that's what you get to look forward to when you're a level 3, everybody, as the corporate audit team, auditing your processes.
No, but it's not so much auditing our processes, but what you have designed, it's being audited by them when you by the sales force, the sales managers, the marketing guys. So it's
okay.
yeah. So it's not the auditing of the sales enablement team. It's auditing of the sales
That others adhere to.
Yeah.
I got you. So I can change this to this. You have functional authority to define expectations that others adhere to. Would that work? Or do you like it back the other way?
No, the word I'm struggling with is expectations.
Okay. So you like it this way, more drawn out?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
And it's tools also, tools.
Okay. So would all of these be required for you to be a function? So we want to have all these. You must meet all these to be a function, or what if you only meet one? Would you be a function?
We're defining this, right? So there's not like there's a handbook of business operations that says this is what a function is.
Well, I think there is some sort of, I mean, from a finance perspective, we could run it by them and see how they define a function, which is where they're going to get the budget code and things like that. So what about from the executive level? What about peers? What about ourselves? Right? So how do we factor in all these different perspectives? What makes you a function? And then is it all of these criteria or not?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, you know, even that first bullet point, it's rare that anyone in an organization, in my view, has
A charter.
a charter.
They're not a function then.
Well, right, but like, you know, the finance team's charter is to count beans and micromanage and be a pain in the ass. Oh wait, that's not the real charter, but that's the way they behave. But it's clearly a function.
Mm-hmm.
But don't they have some vision and mission, some strategy?
Some goals.
Goals, yeah, exactly, for how they operate and what they do.
The budget and cost center piece seem to be the strongest, most objective.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Phil? Are you a function? Are you a function in your company? And how many of these 6 things do you have?
The bottom one, you can check that one. They'll operate without me when I'm gone. Cost center. What's odd is that we don't have budget sits at the VP level. So like I don't have a defined budget. My budget is part of the VP's roll-up budget. So like he has a crayon budget, right? That includes me, but I don't actually own that without taking from the greater pie of our organization within sales operations. So I guess what I'm saying is if Brian, Mark, and Eric are my peers and Brian's really expensive, then my budget goes down because it's not fixed, right? It's variable based on the overall organization and the pillars within that organization, of which I'm one. So, all right, guys, I'll see you later. I'm not a function. I'm not a sales enablement function. I got to go.
But Phil, the money that you have to work with, does that, I mean, do you, out of the roll-up budget, do you get a share? That
Yes, I get a share. I get a share.
You get a share that you can decide over throughout the year. So once it's given to you, that share, can it be taken away?
Yeah, so technically I have a share, and technically I have authority over that share, but the share today and the share tomorrow could be very different numbers. And I don't have, I mean, I don't know that anyone has complete authority on budget at times.
No, you don't.
Right, right. But I don't even have a minimal guideline, right? So Brian's not coming to me and saying, okay, well, anything over 10,000 we have to talk about, right? I don't even have that kind of guideline. We have to talk about everything and anything. If there's something that needs to come out of there outside of my my payroll, my FTE component, right? Any kind of OPEX and CAPEX stuff, all needs to be a conversation, even if it's $50. So I don't feel like that's authority. I feel like that's
yeah, maybe nobody has authority and we call it like influence.
Yeah.
What if we change it to have influence on
feels
budget?
Like pretend entitlement, right? Like we have the fake budget, but you may or may not ever get to touch it, right? So I'm used to building business cases, and that's not foreign. I think that makes sense if you want to be able to responsibly leverage a budget, but authority is a strong word, but influence definitely helps that. Cost center department, yep. Clear charter, nope. Given authority, yep, I would say that's accurate. Sure.
What do you think about this, Helena, if we just tweak this a little bit to be softer? Especially because it's an interesting discussion for sure. There's so many sign-offs and cross-checks on any money being spent.
I think a lot of that probably depends on the maturity of the organization as well, right? I mean, if you think about it, in a simple manner, right?
So what I'm sitting here thinking is, when it comes to budget, well, when you, as a function, when you create your strategy and your operational plans for a year, and to that you link the various services that you will provide, the various programs you will run, and you associate all of that with, okay, what headcounts do I have? How many headcounts do I need? What type of roles are absolutely critical to be able to provide those services, to run those programs, or design whatever you need to design in a program project. And so if you only have influence on what you distribute to what of that budget money and not sort of authority, I think it will be extremely difficult for you the bigger the function grows.
So, Helena, are you saying that you'd have to, turn down certain initiatives because they're outside, I wouldn't say the scope, but the budget to complete those?
Yes, that can happen.
Well,
Or
I mean, if you're in a role based, you're like, hey, you got to get this done, and we need to do this. here's the commitments that are rolling down or cascading down from the executive level that we want to have completed this year, and you're going to be working on those as well as ad hoc ones that pop up. Versus, hey, this is our budget. This is how much, which again I think would cause you to be more productive in your efforts, knowing that everything was coming out of your budget, in terms of what you're working on and how efficient you're being with your resources as well.
So what I'm saying is that everyone knows if you get initiatives that the executive leadership team or other key stakeholders really want you to do for very good reasons.
Right.
Well, even if that completely, screws up all your other plans, well, you just have to, change but get an agreement on with, the key decision makers on, okay, we can't provide this service, we can't redesign this process or tool because we have to take care of this initiative. That might also mean that we need to redistribute the budget because the key initiative now coming down to us from the CEO or COO, for example, it's so important. So, well, we had planned to provide this part of the sales force, for instance, with this services from that and that time. Well, we won't be able to. We need to use that money to cater for the initiative coming down from the CXO level, unless they actually give us more money, extra money during the fiscal year to do it, which is very rare. So it's you have to you have to be able to be flexible and decide to a certain degree within your bucket of services and programs that you had in your operational plans set out that you were going to provide during the year. You need to be flexible in changing, because my experience is that how much you plan, half through the fiscal year, about 50% has changed.
Right.
So what if we're just trying to figure out the budget one and then we'll move on. But what if you have budget authority or the ability to find investments needed to achieve goals? Or how would we reword number 2 to be more binary? If budget authority is I like to have budget authority, because if you're in a function, you'll get included in the annual process of budgeting, and people at least ask you what you think you need for the year. To me, that's a authority thing, that you're in, consulting. People consult with you about, hey, for 2022, what are you thinking? What investments do you need? Why don't you put together your case and we'll see what we can get funded in the big pot. At least to me, that's part of authority.
Yeah,
So,
and I like very much what you say there about to find a fund is it find or fund?
Oh, okay.
Fund investments needed to achieve, could one say perhaps achieve agreed goals? Because the point is, if they are agreed with, the executive leadership team or the level below, then people have a greater respect for that. This is the budget you need, because you have agreed goals with these guys.
Would the term a negotiated budget add to that, or summarize the concept, right? It's, like, hey, I have a budget and we talked about it and we agreed to it.
So like if we put here negotiated.
Maybe just throwing it out there as a.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think of that, Helena?
As long as it doesn't weaken budget authority, because I noticed you were almost there. It looked like you were thinking about removing the word authority after budget. And I say we agreed with you that budget authority was the key thing. So is it negotiated or is it agreed budget authority? I'm thinking, Eric, that it's seldom agreed unless it's negotiated.
Yeah, that's fine too. I think about the word authority in terms of how different organizations run their governance. In some organizations, you can't go to the bathroom without authority. And others, you have a spending limit up to whatever, and you don't have to ask.
Yeah, but at least that, if you're in that conversation, that you're in the zip code of a function, even having that conversation. There are many sales enablement people who don't even have that conversation of what can I spend, what am I, how do I get factored into next year or whatever. They just have goals like an individual contributor, and somebody tells them they need to achieve X, Y, and Z this year for their salary and 401k contribution. That's not a function to me, that's a role.
That's cool.
So at least if you're factored in and somebody comes to Phil and going, hey, I know this position was created. It's we're heading into budget season here in September. What are you thinking for next year? Then he's in that budget authority zip code to me. He has a say. So it doesn't mean sign off. I took sign off out.
Right. How about just allocated? You've got a budget that's been allocated to sales enablement.
Okay. I don't think we're going to get away from budget authority being in there.
It's fine.
But we can add allocation. I think Phil has allocated something. You might not know what it is exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
You're also, because you have a cost center, finance is tracking how many heads you have. So you have a allocation from them too. So this is something to think about for your annual planning process, even if it's an immature organization. Hey, on paper, how much is my function cost? And what services am I providing? Let's talk about that for 2022 and talk about the initiatives to drive the impact that I need. And that's a way to help elevate the function to eventually get carved out into your own budget, for example. Cool, are we good with this so far? 80-20 rule, good enough for right now?
Yeah.
Cool. Phil, do you want to walk through the roadmap?
Yeah, we can. We can if you want to. I don't know what you guys have been working on or talking about, or where you want to go. I'm flexible, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, we were working on that. What does a business within a business. Does that answer help you, Mark, with your questions that you had? Even if you didn't like the answers? Oh, he's on mute. He must have not really not liked the answers.
That's life, right? That's
all right. So yeah, it is life. Yeah. Nah, I'm sure he's probably in the bathroom or something. So where we were, Phil, is you were talking about 6, and then we were talking about 7 and 8. That's where we were on the journey. So if I go fast forward here, 6 is, I think we talked about this pretty well in a dedicated meeting, which is elevating the roles and the job descriptions and the capabilities, inspect what's expected. This was where do you get quick wins, the impact in pockets, your dependencies, which you and I have talked about. What are your production capabilities? You keep getting handed people, and then it sounds like there was a concern that you had about like what are my services and what am I producing for this investment, right? And then 8 is okay, now we're working together because I have the people and because I know what everybody's supposed to be doing. We're going to collaborate, we're going to get feedback, we're going to establish norms, we're going to tackle new problems, we're going to innovate, we're going to communicate differently, we're going to start being more strategic and doing rapid prototyping, right? This is the farm team. We're developing the farm team to get to level 3 with this. So that's 6, 7, and 8. And then 9 was, what's your portfolio? These are fledgling services, right? So how do you develop the insights you need? How do you map your stakeholders of who's impacted? What outcomes you're going to be known for at the functional level? If you're going to provide services and create that value, how do you draw a picture of it? That's the architecture. So what's your architecture of your service you're providing, whether it's account planning or kickoffs or whatever? And then what are the value streams? What are the give and gets needed to impact that architecture? And then how expensive is it to deliver? That's 9. And then 10 is we're anchoring productivity against those services. I didn't call them services in 9, we're calling it a value portfolio, but we're ratcheting the productivity so that we can get to services with new talent, new demand, better internal handoffs, relationships, and we're setting up for 3 with the productivity improvements. So I just walked through all of 2, but is there one, Phil, that you want to kind of double click into out of 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10?
Can you go to 9 again? Value portfolios. So functional outcomes is a challenge. I think we've talked about this previously because we don't have we've got crayon-based LMS and knowledge management systems. So reporting is a challenge for us, and we don't have a reporting pillar that's completely structured up, right? They're in the midst of structuring up, migrating out of spreadsheets to real tools and things like that. So like functional outcomes for me right now, the measure of success is more on-time delivery and the design components, right? Which is really just internal to the team and has nothing to do with the actual business. So I'm having a big challenge there because, for instance, if we train on product potato, right? I need to have a benchmark on potato right now, right? And it seems like we only have that data at a high level kind of conglomerate as opposed to by role type. So what I would like to know is, if potato is specifically for the ESB segment, what's the benchmark of potato now? And then what are the activities that we did and the content that we did to drive improvement in the promotion and attachment of potato? And then how do we measure our outcome, 30, 60, 90 post? So I've got a lot of challenges there. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts? And not only that, the potato component in ESB, that's a fast transaction type, right? But if I needed to sell, tomato in enterprise, that's a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month sales cycle. How do we align to outcomes when we know the sales cycle is well outside a measurable component to be able to articulate value back to the business, right?
Yeah.
Because it's outcomes, right? And from a sales perspective, outcome is attachment, right? It's dollars and cents, widgets, however we want to calculate it.
Yeah.
So some of those are complex equations without the infrastructure to support accurate reporting outside of manual work.
Yeah. So it's like you're gonna hit the ceiling. You're just gonna be
I'm gonna
like,
kill my people, having them do a lot of administrative work, manually
Yeah.
tracking the pipeline dollar week over week, and then aggregate that to be able to say, okay, month over month, are we seeing a trend in pipeline growth, and are we seeing a trend in actual outcome, like actual closed business?
Yeah, and then that's gonna take away that's gonna kind of stall out your functional evolution because you haven't got
Correct.
the that operating model component of performance is not as mature as the rest. So now you have
Right.
you're only as strong as the weakest link. So in the operating model fan here, if you're a level 0 on performance component and you're ratcheting up the rest, you can only go so far.
Right.
So how do you get this and your tech to get in alignment?
Correct. And I think that the theme is honestly consistent throughout all of our conversations that we've kind of had when we're using this as a use case, right? Is, the playbook is being able to execute to the playbook and calibrate on our where we are on the map with respect to the playbook is compromised based on the infrastructure that we have to run our team, right? So even though we have the right vision and mission, even though we're doing things in the right motions and direction, we can't actually connect the dots in ways that we want to because we don't have the right tools, or we don't have the right partners because those partners are not yet mature to support our need for the business. So that's where I think, and when I look at this wheel, that's a critical component that I see across all of these things, that doesn't matter how well you're doing your job when you have those cross-functional or I guess infrastructure and cross-functional big rocks that cause you to I have to completely readjust, I think, what my expectation is of a roadmap to get from here to there based on a lot of these components.
Yeah, this
And
is
things are going
interesting.
well. It's not terrible, you know what I mean, by any means, but I have to build a business case to get a new tool. I have to build a business case to get, so for instance, business case, better LMS system, business case, better, knowledge management system. Like everything is under evaluation right now, right? So, and because of the compromised functionality of those resources that we have, a critical component of which is reporting. So, it
What do you guys?
maturity.
Yeah, because it almost feels like you've got this momentum, but then you get stalled out on the growth trajectory because the environment or the ecosystem around you, you're only as strong as the weakest link. and
Right.
then everybody's stretched, and that the fabric internally is hard to string together.
Yeah, so I think there's a platform issue, there's a capability issue, internal and external, right? So internally on the team, what's the talent that we have, what we're capable of, platform, I would say platform and tools, right? So some of the capabilities that are compromised are because of the platform or the tool or lack thereof that we're using. And then, partners, cross-functionally, are our partners positioned and developed enough to support how we need to work well together, right? And can they own up their end of the bargain for us to be able to accurately report out on our business impact, right? So all of those things are
Yeah.
are kind of big roadblocks in the equation.
Yeah, there's like two evolutionary paths that I've seen, and you guys can chime in on this. But one is in the annual budgeting process, establishing and carving out different things and taking that, multi-year view and doing the best you can with what you have, and then building that case. And then the other is the Trojan horse, piggybacking in on an initiative to get the initiative to work and helping people like see it that way. Both involve seeing the executive seeing through either the budgeting process or, the idea of this initiative is working differently, or they're getting different visibility, and they want that to happen on everything. And you say, well, I can't do that because, dot, dot, dot.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge that you have is if you do it on one, you're doing it on everything because it's not carved out that way. So it's still the same amount of work almost to do the reporting on something that's in a sliver initiative. It seems like, you still got to do that work.
Yeah, it just adds to the complexity of the
Yeah.
motions, right? And not to mention that most of my talent comes from the business, right? Meaning they're not actually like enablement professionals per se, right? They haven't aligned into any kind of methodologies, any kind of frameworks. They were naturals, right? They were naturals, and now they've been asked to own slivers of roles, and now I'm trying to ask them to shift how they think and how they work and things of that nature. So those are all critical roadblocks. It's not that they don't have talent to be able to adapt, and I think a lot of fantastic, talented people do have some of that actual experience under their belt, which helps them be practical and role centric. So there's just there's just a lot of critical components that seem to be right now the roadblock. Everyone else probably thinks that we're doing awesome, and in my mind, I'm very pleased with the amount of change management that they've been able to embrace and the motions. But these are kind of critical gaps that are sitting on my heart, if you will, in saying, okay, we did a lot in 90 days, but we're not going to do a lot in the next 90 if we can't start to address some of these and throughout the rest of the year, right? In H2, we're really not going to be able to do much except, optimize the change that we've done already, as opposed to innovate where we should be going, from my perspective.
Yeah.
That's very much a frustration that I recognized, especially the one when it comes to do you have the talents that you need to have in the team or working with you to be able to actually deliver those services and programs.
So the third area, so we talked about two, the business case and then piggybacking. But the third thing I've seen is really this idea of focus and laser beaming in. So we have our talent enablement kind of lens on this, right? If you double down and say I'm in the talent enablement business within a business, what am I providing and why? That's a third way to help people see what you're doing. It's a clarification exercise. And what I have for that is I use this canvas here where I, sometimes I make this a black box in the middle. That's enablement. And as a business within a business, you're on a journey, from here to there. You have inputs you need, and the more consistent and high quality the inputs are, the better off you are on the output side. The black box inside is what you're seeing, but nobody else sees for a variety of different reasons. So who are the investors in your business within a business in the middle? What resources do you need, and what do they look like? And then on the input side, with the dependencies, et cetera, what do you need? And having a discussion with your bosses and others up the chain to say, look, I'm building a business within a business, actually using that language and casting a vision for a business within a business. I'm in startup mode right now. For me to evolve, here's how I'm thinking about it, and mapping that out provides some clarity. And I've done it this way a couple of times where I say, look, our goal is onboarding, and you executives are, all in a tizzy about onboarding. I will, and this goes to Helena's question or point earlier, what initiative can you carve off and give it an identity? And I'm going to fix onboarding. And our goal is to go from random filling out the application to a service that's turnkey, and we're able to get reps in front of people having conversations. Because our current onboarding program is about, did we get people to fill out the application and did we get them hired? I want to get people in front of customers for my service. So to do that, here's how I'm thinking about it. And this is the business within a business that I need. In this case, it's a service. That these are the components of it. And in my talent enablement portfolio, this is how I'm thinking about it. And I need these dependencies, and actually showing this to your dependencies and people internally to get them to elevate and to help. Working with IT and analytics teams around the types of resources you need to make this work better. That this type of discussion helps clarify the functional view of how it interlocks with other groups, and then enrolls them, if done right, or done in a way that's positive and not confrontational, like get your shit together, people, but more like, hey, I'm a partner, you're a partner, I really need your help. How do we make this work for you? Because I'm on a journey. Can you help me on my journey? This is a tool I've used to help with that. And just mapping it, it's a design question.
Yeah.
So like reporting, you see it as a huge issue, and it's going to hold you up on your journey. Other people don't even have it on their radar.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see that as capabilities, right? So I think platform tool capabilities, meaning the capabilities of the talent partners, and that's cross-functional partners, because they're the ones that are kind of key inputs, right? And then I also see the fourth thing that I think is a big gap that I see a problem with right now is cultural, and that's the target audience. Like we've got the buy-in here, but here we're activity focused, right? We're coin operated, we're activity focused, and there's a gap between the perspective here and the perspective here on the value that my team is exhibiting through these changes that we've been putting in place, and how we work, what we do, what learning looks like, how learning happens, output types and things of that nature, right? So I know culturally there's always a very big challenge. We're going from a culture that would have 3 or 4 trainings per week in random ways from random groups to very structured, very calculated curriculum paths, if you will, and learning paths. So, we've given them less, we're more targeted with what and why and how, and yet the engagement is not there because the culture is tribe oriented, right? So Phil has a question, hey Brian, how do I answer this? As opposed to, hey Brian, hey Phil, use your resources, right? It's an activity. Attendance is an activity. It's not actually a place where you go to learn. right? It's a place you go to say that you were there, and then you just ask somebody that paid attention. You're right. It's like school all over again, right? Who paid attention to that lecture so I can get their notes.
Yep.
So, and again, that I get it, that takes time, but those, I think, they're the 4 critical gaps that I think are really going to determine how we add value in H2 as we move towards a more mature operating model, and we can check the boxes in the playbook and apply those and stick to them, right? Not revisit them over and over again, unless we're at that stage of maturity where we're as an organization, we're ready to level up.
Yeah, and I think that that's the two areas here, is this outputs and investors. So if on the output side they only want you know, lukewarm tap water, and you're trying to sell them ice cold Evian, that's a problem. So that what do they want to buy? You know, how do you become customer centric and clarify? And you actually might have to go into sales mode and educate them. Like, it's really going to be interesting. Like, how do you create demand for your services in here? Because if you start building this way and start building services that nobody's buying, then you've got pissed off, burned out people, and nobody's participating. So it's almost like the sales challenge. If I'm running a business within a business, do I follow the money over here and follow my customers and educate them along the way, or do I go build an iPhone and have them flock to it? And that's the trade-off decision. Building the iPhone is really resource intensive, and your investors may not want to do that. So the key is the customers and investor side of this on something like this, and that you can't underestimate the impact of building those relationships in sales and treating them as the customer and saying, look, you know, and blending strategies to say, look, here's one sales leader in one region who wants to buy the iPhone. How do I figure out how to have an innovative approach with that one person and start there, while I'm giving everybody else the minimum, the operational piece.
Right.
You know.
Right. And you know, and I want to be clear, like, it's not a bad situation, right? I feel like a lot of times it's easy for it to be perceived as like, oh man, everybody sucks and everybody's out to get you. It's not like, it feels okay, right, to everyone else. Everyone else is like happy with what's happening and things like that. I'm focused down the road, right?
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
focused.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
You operate, this is bifocal. It's like two parallel planes. You have the tactical day to day, and then you have the strategic. And in the strategic, it's the forward lean. Let me skate to the puck. Well, let me be a year down the road, and how do I get there? But in the day to day, it's fine. But you know that that's not going to grow over the long term.
Right.
So
exactly.
that this is a parallel plane bifocal discussion.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the, it still goes to how do you, like, one of the things that I've done in the past is, here's my business as usual day-to-day motion, but then here's the two initiatives that are going to be strategic, where I'm going to try new stuff and try to educate customers and do innovative stuff that nobody else either sees or that I could use to educate and develop demand for my services. You know, like, look what we did over here, everybody. Well, how come I didn't get that? Oh, you want that? Okay, well, let's talk about that. Ooh, I don't have the resources. You know, will you help me go get some money? Like, outside in piece. You
Right.
know, it's like two piston engine. You know, it's like super fast, tactical, go. And then you've got this other one, which is, you know, it's the diesel running slow and purposeful, and you know, but they're running at the same time. It's two pistons, two patterns.
Yep.
And the last thing I'll say on that is, don't try to merge them together, because two things happen. If you take the, if I want everybody to get there, it's like it bogs down the whole entire innovation, and people can't get there in mass. Also at the human level, people cannot operate in two domains at once for very long. They really get frazzled. It's almost like, the analogy I use is tennis and soccer, or tennis and baseball. We say we have a ball, we say we have a field of play, we say we have lines on the field, we say it's outside, we say the same things, but they're completely different games. And people freak out in both of those at one time. If they're in both games at once, they can't do it. Their heads explode. So it has to be very intentional that you're innovating. If you have an operational bias and everybody's an operator, the other game we play is called the innovation game. Here's the rules of that game. And if we can have different language on the innovation game, it's super helpful. So when people know they're playing that game, and then educating them and teaching them that there's two games going on here. We have two games, people. This is the innovation game we're playing right now. Different game. That might help at the individual level. So I'm probably preaching right now, but it's just two watch outs. There's the functional watch out, which is over engineering something that nobody buys. And then at the individual level, it's the people get frazzled because they don't literally no structure. They perceive no structure.
Yeah,
but it's there.
Really comfortable recognizing the over engineering because nobody will buy. I'm pretty comfortable with that, and I've already had to kind of throttle it down, multiple times. But that's good. I mean, I think that's good input and good feedback. But I think those are, I gotta think those are going to be real problems. Like if this is the the Bible per se, right, for sales enablement, structuring of a function, and checking all the boxes. These are going to be the real challenges.
Discussions. Yeah. Well, it's universal too. It's the, how do I bring people along? How do I help executives see? How do I help my remit match my vision? So there's the vision you have, and then there's the actual remit from the company to give you that vision. But then there's also the expectation that executives have of the function, So it's like, how does all this evolve and morph, and not let the host body dictate it, right? Not let the company ecosystem dictate it, but how do you orchestrate the ecosystem to emerge to it, which is the challenge. That's why orchestration is a thing to me. Like, it's not just a buzzword. Like, these are ecosystem challenges that the ecosystem has to be orchestrated, which means you have to think a year ahead, and orchestrate that outcome like you're doing.
Yeah, it hurts my brain some days.
Yeah.
But so maybe more targeted question. Anybody have any idea on or thoughts on how do you interpersonal communication with your team in that type of equation? Like right now I'm about to kind of run them through an exercise of putting together a QBR to articulate what we've done over the last 90 days based on their specific function within the team. And I don't want it to be an exercise, but I want it to be a moment where they can kind of, celebrate and take a breath and recognize. So everything we're talking about, if I said, hey, we're not very mature, they're going to take offense to that in my mind, right? Because they just have a different mindset. So, I feel pretty good about coaching and all that kind of stuff. I've got a lot of experience there, but I was just curious if anyone else had any kind of input or wanted to share something in with regard to, how do you do that with a team in this type of situation, right? That's tenured, that you've inherited, that is asked to run a race that is challenging, and we're defining it as we're running it, right?
Avoid those terms that have judgment associated with them.
So word selection, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Won't use the word why ever. I don't ever say why.
But that, that word mature, right? It's very, there's judgment and,
Correct. I agree.
but here's where we are, here's where we're going. Here's the benefit of where we're going. That becomes objective and not personal.
Good point.
Yeah, I think the other piece is it's like celebrate the idea, like zero in on like what is progress. And a lot of people are in the vein because they've been taught that progress equals things are done and they're off the plate. So progress equals done and off the plate. Here, and what you're doing, progress means, incremental improvement, and that has to be celebrated. So it doesn't matter if it's done and off the plate and perfect in that regard. It means we're making progress, and then help them come to the conclusion that there's still more work to do. We are making progress. Let's celebrate that. And then how do we set the frame that there's still more things to do, not to get done, but to evolve. There's still more evolution and growth we need. And
Right.
that's always the tension is, oh, we're so busy. Look at all this awesome stuff. Whoo, high five. And you're like, well, crap, we advanced the ball, 4 yards. There's still 96 yards to go. And they're like trying to celebrate like they won the Super Bowl. And you're like, oh shit. How do I tell them we're getting our ass handed to us, or we still got 96 yards to go?
Yeah.
And that's the hard part is, so how do you say, look, let's roll. And I use role, like I pretend role play. So let's pretend we're delivering, and this is where the outside in comes in to me, because if you let the the internal customer be the proxy for that forcing function, and say, hey, this is a great QBR. What if I had invited, somebody to attend this? What do you think they would say? And just see what happens there. Like the idea of injecting the internal customer after you've celebrated and all that as a way to stretch their thinking. Not to put them on
Yeah.
the spot, but just to go, oh crap, that's a good point. I don't know what they would say. Once they get past well, it's too long and I didn't like your slides, which everybody always says. What are they going to say after that? So that's my 10 cents worth.
Yeah, no, those are good. I feel like a cheerleader right now, and hey, this is good. I'm so, you guys did a great job. We did this. We got this out the door. Celebrate this. And that's really like not my strong suit at all.
Yeah.
Right? I got 20 years of sales. It's okay, great, Brian. What do you want, a fucking medal because you did your job? Do it again and do it more. Right? Like that's like what's ingrained in my soul. And unfortunately, that's what they're used to, and that's what I think they're a snake bitten on, with regard to, if we had a QBR with a leader on, as the first time, they would be anticipating the negative in feedback as opposed to the accomplishments that we want to acknowledge. So there's some healing that I have to do at the same time. So it's
well, I think the
interesting.
issue with that I've seen over and over again is two things. Are we on a performance-based team or not? And you have competitive sports background probably too. So that whole paradigm is largely lost in business, which is the sales mindset, the performance mindset, competitive. We run marathons not because they're easy, but because they're hard, damn it, right? A lot of other functions, and most people don't put themselves through that idea of how do I improve performance. So that muscle isn't there in a lot of people. So when you start bringing up performance, they get defensive. The other piece is, and there's always a decision. Are you going to build a performance-based team or not? And it's binary. You either are or you're not. You can't do both. It's either performance driven or not, period. And I'll debate that till the cows come home. The second one is you either design a function and put people in it. This is the confrontational one. You either design a function and put people in it, or you design the function for the people you have. And that's always, it's binary. You can only do one or the other. You can't do
Right.
both. And that's, so yes, if you feel like you have to cheerlead them, fine. But in the back of your head, it's, are we building a performance-based team or not? And am I building a function that I got to put people into? Do they need to evolve to the function or not? I'm not, and if I go, I'm going to build a function and these are the people I have to evolve to that, then how do I help them? And I have to be very clear on that. And the second one is, am I developing a team that's happy and comfortable, or a performance-driven team that's trying to close the gap? And what's going to be required to get there? And those are the two sticking points of any leader in enablement right now, especially with all of the cultural HR stuff, social responsibility, and all the uprisings and all those things. It's really sensitive to have the performance conversations right now in any company. So that's why I was suggesting on somebody's call, the HR, talking to HR and involving them in this early on. This is an evolution, and I'm on a 2-year journey, and it's likely I'm not going to have the same people on the bus, and being proactive about that if you're going to go down that route, depending on the answers of your questions, those two questions.
Still, one thought I have is, because you talked about cheerleading and you talked about not using, references to what a mature function would be and so on. But I was thinking for almost any team, there is a vision of what one ultimately wants to accomplish or strive for. And could you get your team excited about being part of the very unique journey of achieving a vision in the company, of doing something that no one has done before in the company?
Yes, absolutely, we can, and you're spot on. That's what I've been kind of as part of the cheerleading motion, and saying, hey, we didn't have this. Look what we have. We didn't have this. No one's done this, right? When was the last time you've seen something like this? Look at this feedback that I got from an agent directly or a manager directly, acknowledging that they recognize how we're doing blank, 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 right? So.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you right there. It's really it's valuable and important for them to kind of recognize that it's not. I mean, sometimes cheerleading is just cheerleading, right? Right. I believe in you. You're going to be great. This is going to work. You're such a great person, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm using exactly what you're talking about is observations and feedback from the business, within the business, around the business, to be able to kind of be the catalyst for that cheer. Otherwise, I don't think I could cheerlead candidly, because it's just not, there's a degree where it wears off and I just can't do it effectively, right? But I'm trying to connect it back to the business, our core customers.
Yep.
So
I think we're out of time.
Oh, yep, we sure are.
But we can continue the conversation on that. Hopefully this is helpful to hear everybody's perspective and give you stuff to think about, Phil. And, thanks for coming again. These are always, I learn a lot in these, so I know it's a bit organic, but to me, we covered a lot of ground. We hit the roadmap, we did the operating model, we talked about what is a function, we talked about internal navigation. So I appreciate everybody's help on that. And hopefully it was, so Eric, what did you get out of today? And then Helena, what did you get out of today? And Mark, what did you get out of today?
I think it's just helpful to fine tune some of these definitions and word choices, because that brings, for me, clarity to a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think for me, it was, we talked a lot about, we went into, what's a function. I think that was certainly really a very, very helpful component for me. And then, kind of the input-output model, because I was thinking kind of the same thing earlier. I'm like, in the sense of running a business within a business, what's our output? So all of it was good. I mean, I always come away with a huge amount. So I was those two components, I think, for me, stood out.
Great.
It was, I found it useful to have a bit of a recap on some of the things we discussed last week. And useful also, really useful to think about, okay, what constitutes a function? To be able to very clearly specify that for someone. I think it's I like, Brian, that you give a number of examples, sometimes often very short examples. And today the examples you gave, well, this, it's either or, it's either this or it's that. It can't be it's something in between, because da 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 da.
Yeah.
That really makes one think.
Yeah. Cool. Anything from you, Phil, before we let you go?
No, that was good. I appreciate the perspective and the input on some of these things that we're navigating. It's kind of fun to see, to gain affirmation or to gain perspective in how I might adjust course, right, or double down in specific areas. So it's cool. I don't know. It's really interesting. It's really interesting to me. I've led a lot over years, but not within this environment, right? And it's very,
in sales
very
and
different.
marketing, it's so hard to evolve maturity in sales and marketing, because there's no standards, there's no processes. It's just everybody's got their own approach, and it's just so hard.
And there's good work happening around every corner, so everyone has validity in their good work. But it's a bunch of good work in pockets that actually is lacking the cohesion that we need to pull together, and it's hard for people to understand that until we help them see it, I guess.
Right.
So,
all right, everybody. Thanks so much.
Yeah, good stuff,
Phil.
Thanks, everyone.
Alrighty.
Have a great one.
See you next week.
Good one.
Have a good
Bye.
one. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.